Well, that was definitely something. Hey there guys, and welcome back to Dino Reviews. We are continuing on with our 31 Days of Halloween, and today we are looking at The Witches. So The Witches is a 2020 dark fantasy comedy film. It's directed by Robert Zemeckis and it stars Anne Hathaway and Octavia Spencer. Now guys, what I will say about this movie, there's actually a lot I really enjoyed about it. I did have fun with the movie, but I was quite disappointed in The Witches. Now we will get into that more in our negatives, but we're going to start with our positives. So my first positive with the movie is actually Octavia Spencer. I thought she was brilliant as the grandmother in the movie. For me guys, she was definitely the best part of the film. She just had a warmth to her that really kind of brought you into the movie. You cared about her character, and anytime she was on screen I absolutely had a blast. I thought she was quite funny, she was quite caring, she was just a great character in the movie. And that kind of goes for her grandson as well. At first I was unsure of if I'd like the kind of narration by Chris Rock, but honestly I didn't mind it. At times it does kind of take you out of the movie, but you get used to it really fast. I will say guys, the actor playing him at times wasn't the most energetic actor in the movie, but he was still just a fun character. I really liked the relationship between the grandmother and the grandson as well. I thought it was really endearing throughout the entire movie, and it just kind of gave you characters to root for. As well as that, when the grandson becomes a mouse in the movie, I probably prefer his performance a little bit better. He just was more energetic as the mouse, you could hear it in his voice, and he seemed a lot more comfortable. Another positive is definitely Bruno in the movie. So he, for me, is very similar to the book and the last movie. The character is pretty much the exact same, but he's a really fun character. The kid playing him was absolutely brilliant, but I just loved what happened with his character. He was quite funny, he was there obviously for the comedic effect, and almost every joke that surrounded him hit really well. My next positive is definitely the look of the movie and just the cinematography. You know, the costume design as well, everything works in that sense. Now if you look back at a lot of Robert Zemeckis films, you do see kind of his touch in there of course, but everything kind of draws you in. You got bright gorgeous colours on screen. The costumes of the witches as well are brilliant, but just the overall look of the film I was a huge fan of. And my last positive is definitely the story. Now the story, you may go back to Roald Dahl's book and actually give that credit for it, but I just do enjoy the story altogether. I like kind of the little twists and turns they actually threw in here, particularly the ending of the movie as well. It is a much darker ending than we get in that first film. But what I liked about the movie is they kept the basic story intact. I thought it was a really great way just to bring older audiences into it as well. But as well as that, we just want an adaptation of The Witches. You know, we don't want something completely different. We do want slight changes to it just to kind of mix things up, but I didn't want them ruining the actual story that we've always wanted to see. Now guys, going in from here, we will definitely have some spoilers in the movie, so if you haven't watched the movie already, maybe check that out before continuing on with the review. My first negative guys is actually Anne Hathaway as the Grand High Witch. Now the reason for that guys, I honestly just thought her performance was way too over the top. I've seen a lot of people talk about her performance as kind of campy and brilliant because of that, but when I looked at the original Witches, I never saw the Grand High Witch as a campy character. What I always loved about the witches in particular in that movie is they are still grounded characters. You know, they have these disfigured faces, these bald heads, but they are still characters that you could meet on the street. There's something very normal and natural about them that they're hiding in plain sight. With Anne Hathaway, she was so over the top in the movie. Even the scars on her face just made her stand out. She came across as more of a grumpy, angry child throughout the movie that was kind of shouting and screaming every point in the film. Rather than being this character that children should be afraid of, I honestly just found her as this rich, spoilt woman. She constantly was crying, she was very emotional throughout the entire movie, and it took away from the character. She just didn't come across as scary at all. There was one scene in the entire movie where I actually loved her character, and that's when she's sniffing out the grandson under this kind of stage. I thought that was really terrifying and quite creepy, but beyond that, I just thought it was a bit over the top. As well as that, the big scene kind of in that ballroom where they're having their big meeting, that didn't work for me. I thought the scene was actually quite boring. She was doing everything she could, she was over the top, but again, it just felt like she was reading from a script. You know, the character didn't seem fully realised. So guys, the Grand High Witch for me just didn't work. I thought she looked great as a character. The special effects are another story, we'll get into that, but just the performance by Anne Hathaway was a little bit too much. It came across, again guys, as if she was reading off a script and she didn't really know what she was doing with the character. Also for the witches, they were definitely another negative. They honestly again just came across as unbelievable. They were kind of walking in unison throughout the entire movie. Even the ending of the movie when they're sitting for dinner, they were all kind of sitting there like soldiers. So they weren't these kind of characters that, in my opinion, kids would go up to. They were offering, chocolate to the kids and stuff like that. But again, guys, if you look at the original movie, they just come across as believable, real people. Now, I know they were kind of going for this kind of campy look of the movie, so I'm sure when I watch it again, maybe over time, I'll ease to that a little bit more. But just the witches themselves, again, were just a low point in the film. As well as that kind of the first interaction we get with a witch, she's offering chocolate to the grandson in the film. And what annoyed me about it is that's a really interesting scene. It's a very dark scene, but suddenly we have this CGI snake that comes into it. For me, guys, what I think is so scary about Roald Dahl's The Witches and even the original movie is you don't need any CGI at all. You don't need any kind of huge monsters. What's most terrifying about that film is it's just a stranger offering candy to a child. That alone is the darkest part of it, that she's a strange character. The second they introduced that CGI snake, it completely took me out of the scene and I wasn't terrified or concerned about the grandson. Now, speaking of the CGI, it is chock full in this movie. I don't know what they were thinking with the film, but they honestly just threw so much CGI, and bad CGI at that. There's a cat in this movie that's actually in quite a lot of the movie and it just looks extremely unrealistic. And that's what I got with the CGI in this movie. When it appeared on screen, it always took you out. The cat himself, when he's kind of in the darker scenes, he looks great, but the second he's up in your face, it just takes it away. When Anne Hathaway's character, the Grand High Witch, is introduced, she's introduced with that cat. And again, it just pulls all focus away from her and it puts it onto the strange CGI cat that's in the scene. Now, as for the mice, what I'll say, guys, and I saw this in the trailer, the second I saw the mice in the trailer and the second I saw the mice in this one, I just thought of Alvin and the Chipmunks. It just looked quite comical, and again, it just didn't look like good CGI. But I will say, guys, I actually got used to the mice in the movie. After a while, I didn't mind that CGI at all. I think they actually perfected that, but everything else they really didn't. Even the transformations, there's nothing creepy about them, but at the same time, they look quite sloppy. There's one scene in the movie where that Grand High Witch kills one of the witches, and the CGI they use in that scene actually looks great. It looked quite creepy, but it also looks quite realistic. Another negative I had with the movie is actually the inconsistencies and the kind of plot holes throughout the entire film. So again, guys, that big meeting, that classic scene between all the witches, the Grand High Witch starts basically tearing the room up. She throws tables around the place, she smashes an entire stage, and for me, watching the movie, all I could think about in that scene was, how are they going to explain this? This is a group of women that are meeting in this hotel and it's never actually explained. She literally throws a stage across the room and breaks it apart, and none of that is explained in the movie. That's the same at the end of the movie when the witches start drinking the poison in their soup and they start kind of flying around the room and get turned into rats. Now, these witches are literally exploding in front of a group of people, and a group of people at the tables are just watching the witches do it. There is no concern, they're not shocked in any way. The only time they get shocked in the movie is when the rats are flying at them. So again, I just thought that was really strange, and I just couldn't get why a movie like this couldn't explain that. There was a lot of plot holes like that throughout the entire movie that again just constantly took me out, because that's what I was thinking about. And another negative, guys, is definitely the tone of the movie. Now, I know this is kind of a campy, colourful children's version of the movie. I get that, definitely, but with Roald Dahl, he did make the book to be dark. That's the story he wanted to tell. And when you take that out of the story, I do think you miss the fundamental element you actually need in the film. There's a scene in this movie where a young girl gets turned into a chicken, and when I saw that scene, I started laughing to myself just because I thought it was quite comical. And that was the problem with the movie. I didn't care for her character at all. In the original movie, and I think in the novel as well, there's a young child who gets stuck in a painting and grows old and dies in that painting. For me as a child, that one actually stuck by me. As well as that, when you look at the kids, it's a cautionary tale of not talking to strangers, and none of that's really met in the movie. The movie is meant to be dark, and I get that they want to do some comedy in there, but there is just no darkness to it at all. Some people have said it's scary. Even for me, the witches, when they appear with the kind of big smiles on their face, the CGI again took me out of that. So I do think that's quite unfortunate, guys, that they didn't go down that darker route with it. It didn't have to be as dark as the original, but I just wanted to feel some sort of connection and fear for the characters. Guys, if you've seen the movie though, make sure you let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. Were you a fan of it? Did you prefer it more than the original? Or did it live up to your expectations? Remember, guys, we are doing 31 days of reviews over the month of October. So that's 31 days of everything with rankings, reviews, and just chatting about movies. If you haven't already, guys, make sure you pop on your notification bell just so you don't miss any of that. Subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.